Most portraits of John F. Kennedy begin with his presidency, but the crucial journey of his early years, from 1935 to 1946, is often overlooked. How did a young man plagued by illness, intense family pressure, and his own rebellious streak develop the strategic acumen to become a world leader? Joining us today is author and historian Scott Badler. Scott has spent years researching the Kennedy family, and his new book, Becoming JFK: John F. Kennedy's Early Path to Leadership, offers a fresh, meticulously researched look into the man behind the myth. Using a compelling narrative style, he explores everything from JFK's eye-opening travels in pre-World War II Europe to his harrowing character-defining experience on PT 109. I'm thrilled to have him here to discuss the making of an American icon. Welcome to the show, Scott. I thought your book sounded really interesting, and I would love to hear more about it. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about it today.
Sure, glad to be here.
There's a lot of books about JFK out there. We were just talking about another Kennedy book. What made you feel that there was a need for another book about JFK, and what makes Becoming JFK different?
Yeah, there's been so many books. I think it's in the thousands now on the Kennedys and JFK. But I guess 90% or more, 99% have to do with the presidency, the assassination, has to do with Jackie, has to do with the family. And I just thought it would be really interesting to look into his early background.
Yeah.
I found some interesting things, and I had written a book previous to this called JFK and the Muckers of Choate.
Okay.
So that was actually a historical novel. It takes place a year and a half when he's at Choate Preparatory School. So I found out some things that happened during that period of his life that kind of shocked me. So I turned that into a historical novel. So this one continues on from there. This one is nonfiction, so a little difference there.
Okay. I had heard a little bit about this in a podcast episode covering JFK's death. But I don't know that many people know he suffered severe chronic illnesses. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about those and how those shaped him to be who he was?
Yeah, I mean, he had what we call autoimmune disease, and he was sick from a very early age. He had scarlet fever at 3, and throughout his life, he was sick, and they call it now celiac disease. He turned into Addison's disease, but he would get fevers, fatigue. He'd lose a lot of weight. He'd go down to 120 pounds. He'd go in the hospital and he'd be there for 3 or 4 days. He stopped at the Mayo Clinic, several times, and they never could sort of figure out what was wrong with him. And after being in incredible pain and just, the interesting thing, what happens with this sort of disease is it just sort of cures itself for a few days. Then all of a sudden he's healthy, he's raring to go. It's sort of an amazing thing, but still, I admire him for the persistence that he showed at all these health problems. He was getting ready to go to travel around Europe, and he really had a bad case of fatigue and losing a lot of weight. So he went to the Mayo Clinic. He'd been there before, and he ended up taking a new sort of treatment called they had steroids at that time. It was sort of the beginning of steroids, and they made a little slit in his leg, and they put a steroid in there, and it would dissolve in his body. And so that allowed him to travel throughout Europe for 3 months when he was trying to develop his thesis for Harvard, as well as be the eyes and ears of his father. Then also he took them, when he was in World War II. Otherwise, I don't know how he could cope. But there was a bad side to that. It sort of led to, they didn't realize the side effects. So there was apparently some osteoporosis, some degeneration of his spine, and we all know how Kennedy had terrible back problems.
Yeah. I guess I knew that he had back issues. Did he have to wear a brace?
He
I think
did.
I came across that unfortunately with his death, is that why he was kind of sitting up was the
Yeah. I mean, it's a second, I don't want to get into that too much, but if he wasn't wearing that brace, he would have slumped over, and you know,
yeah.
but yeah, he did have back problems, and I don't know how he handled the, being on the PT, riding over the waves and bouncing up and down, but he had terrible back problems. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this had to have made him a stronger leader, I would think. I feel like sometimes almost when you're in pain or have to overcome things, it makes you a better leader.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess, as
Right.
the old saying goes. And, I think that's true. I mean, I see his incredible struggles, throughout his life with his health. And
Mhm.
he wasn't going to let anything stop him. I think it had an effect of, he sort of realized he might not live a long time.
Yeah.
And so he really wanted to make the most of every day. And he certainly did that. So I think that had a big effect on his life, not being healthy.
Yeah. How did that, affect his family dynamics? I feel like a lot of his family, they were all kinda go-getters, wanted to be really successful. Did that make him a little bit different from his family?
Hmm. At the very beginning, he sort of took second place to his brother Joe.
Yeah.
Brother Joe was the older brother, and the father had tapped him to be president, and so Jack sort of hung around in the background. Um, Actually, it's sort of interesting. I didn't, when I became interested in young Kennedy, I didn't realize that he had, gone into therapy when he was at Choate. So think of Jack
Oh.
Kennedy and seeing a therapist was, something. He was having a sort of a difficult time at Choate. He was lazy, wasn't doing anything. He kind of led an insurrection. He was kicked out of school. They brought him back. But he ended up saying a couple of sessions with a therapist, and it came out that he felt he couldn't compete with his brother Joe. He didn't feel like he was as smart. Joe was bigger, stronger, was a sort of a star
Yeah.
athlete. So Jack decided, well, I can't compete with him. I'm going to opt out of competition. And
Yeah.
so he didn't do his best work, didn't do anything special. And I think after high school, um, preparatory school, he realized, that wasn't going to work out. And so he went full bore ahead from there. Um, not sure, he and his brother were competitive in every arena. I mean, they went after each
Mhm.
other's girlfriends, playing sports, everything. They were competitive and, it made each other better.
Yeah, right. Which, yeah, that can be positive as well too. My little brother and I are competitive also, and I didn't realize being the older sister that I was in competition with my brother. He was 2
Hmm.
years younger, so he'd be like, "Well, I got a better grade than you did in this class." And it was like, "That was 2 years ago. I didn't know I was competing with you 2 years ago." So,
Yeah. Hmm. That's interesting.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so now I just know it's always a competition.
Yeah.
But, yes, it does make you do better if you, um, have someone kind of poking at you, like,
Right.
you know
Make
yeah.
you do your best work. Yeah. And I think it
Yeah,
really helped JFK really move ahead after he understood what he had to do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And at this time, I know a lot of healthcare, things were a little bit of a stigma, so was that a pretty big step for him to go to therapy and talk those
Well, I don't
issues
think
out?
I don't. It's not anything known about whether he had some resistance to it. But I sort of look at it. He was a very curious guy.
Yeah,
So it was a matter of his high school principal and his father suggested it, and there's going to be some sort of teenage, I guess, resistance. But I think he looked at it as being very curious. This might be interesting to talk with this guy and see what he has to say. Well, I'll try it. See what
yeah,
happens. So I don't think there was actually that much resistance to it.
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, why not if it's gonna help you and yeah. So what is the biggest misconception most people have about young John F. Kennedy?
Let's see. Yeah, there's been a lot of mythology about Kennedy. Um, we sort of make him perfect. And, I read more about him and study him and realize, he has his failings like everybody else. I mean, he was a cheapskate. So that's
Yeah.
one thing you wouldn't expect to
Really.
kind of think,
Uh-huh.
what, the family is rich and everything, but he kind of got that from his father. He didn't have a kind of a lot of empathy for other people. He was a
Okay.
privileged youth and he's kind of narcissistic. So those are a couple of things. I think myth about him that kind of survives today is that we talked about his brother, but people always say, you mentioned the two brothers, and people say, well, once Joe died, he was going to be the next president of the United States. Then it was up to Jack. And
Yeah.
my view is that Jack had already passed his brother by the time Joe had died in the plane crash in World War II. And it
Right.
seems to me there's a lot of evidence for it. One is that he had written a book, Why England Slept. Joe had never written a book.
Mm.
He was a war hero. We can talk more about that later. There's some myths involving that too. But
Okay.
even his father relied on him for advice.
Oh,
When he,
really?
yeah, yeah, um, and he sort of realized Jack had better sort of personal skills. Right on the eve of World War II,
Hmm.
Britain had just declared war on Germany, and a British cruiser, went down with a number of American passengers aboard. But some were saved, and they were sent to Scotland. And
Okay.
so his first diplomatic mission, his father was the ambassador to England, sent him to
Yeah.
Scotland to kind of handle the situation, to calm their fears, to arrange transportation back home, because they were afraid. They wanted American ships to protect them as they went back to the United States, and they were very afraid. So he didn't send Joe, who was a hothead. He sent Jack to
Oh.
handle it. He's 22 years
Yeah.
old at the time. And let's say something else. 1940, Jack was actually out at Stanford, and the ambassador came to California and told Jack, "I'm getting ready to resign as ambassador."
Uh-huh.
He was very low. People didn't think much. He was an appeaser. He wanted to appease Hitler. Didn't want to have the U.S. go into World War II at all.
Hmm.
He comes to California and he tells Joe he's going to resign, but he wants Jack to improve his situation with the American public, to write some memos, to write some articles. And
Okay.
Jack gives him a lot of advice. He says, you got to nip this appeasement in the bud. So he comes to Jack, not Joe, for help in this endeavor. And he
Yeah.
actually asked him to write his memoirs, which Jack said, I'm not getting involved in that. But
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Was he afraid of stepping on his brother's toes by doing certain things, or did he just not want to do them?
No, he didn't want to get involved in writing memoirs. He was ready
Okay.
to sort of go on his own life, and that would have been a real boondoggle and taken a lot of time. So,
Hmm.
his father asked him to do something, he's going to do it. He sent him,
Yeah.
uh, to be his eyes and ears as he traveled out throughout Europe in 1939. So he was
Yeah.
on his own at that time.
Okay. So, with the military, were Joe Jr. and Jack together a lot of the time? Um, no, they were separate? Or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Joe was in Europe, or actually stationed in England.
Mhm.
He was a pilot leading these bombing missions over Germany. Jack was in the Pacific, Solomon Islands, so they
Okay.
did, didn't see each other at all during the war.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. So what you mentioned that Joe Jr. was looked at as kind of a war hero, but there what
well, not Joe Jr. Jack
Oh, I'm
was.
sorry. Jack was.
Yeah,
Okay.
hero. But
Yeah.
there's some myth involved that too. I mean, actually, he was a skipper of a PT boat, the PT 109, which is kind of legendary at this point. But
Okay.
he was he was in one battle, and before the Japanese cruiser cut the ship in half, he wasn't. The men weren't on alert. He didn't have all his engines running, and
Okay.
So before the crash, he certainly wasn't a war hero, and what he did
Okay.
afterwards, I think, actually guilt had something to do with, his heroism in getting his men to safety after that.
Yeah.
So the myth
Okay.
of, Kennedy is that he's a war hero. Well, before the crash, he wasn't a war hero, and I think he always felt a lot of guilt about it when he ran for Congress in '46. His father impressed upon him, we've got to put out this that you were a war hero.
Hmm.
And Kennedy, he resisted because I don't think he felt like he was a war hero. Two of his men
Yeah.
died, and he wasn't. Men weren't alert. He didn't have all his engines running, and so he resisted. In the final, he said, I guess I have to do this. So his father
Right.
printed up 100,000 copies of this story that was in the New Yorker and so forth. So,
Yeah.
but without the PT 109, I don't think he would have been president. So it was a major thing.
Oh,
The U.S.
wow.
was looking for war heroes at that time. So after the
Yeah.
mission, after he came back to land, he said, feeling kind of guilty that they're either going to court martial me or give me a medal.
Yeah.
So, that gives you a
Oh,
sense of how he felt about it, the mixed feelings he had it. And of course, they gave him medals and.
yeah. Um, if they were on alert and all the engines were going, do you think that could have the entire situation could have been prevented?
It's possible. It still would have been tough. He had like
Mhm.
15 seconds. It takes a while to get those engines up. He would have had a chance. He would have had a
Okay.
chance, and we'll never know. But he should have. He should have had his engines running. A recent memo came out that 1946 he made a summary of the event, and we didn't know
Yeah.
at that time that he was aware at 12 midnight the Japanese ships were in the area, and the crash
Oh.
came at 2:30. So that's only recent that we came to know that he knew there were Japanese ships in the area, and
Oh,
he still didn't, um, you know, have all his engines going. So it's interesting
yeah.
why he only has one engine going.
Yeah.
Um, why would he do that? Why would you only have one engine going? Well, a couple of weeks prior to the PT 109 going down, these Japanese float planes would target them. Now, PT boats only went out at night because it was safer. But if you
Okay.
had all three of your engines going, there would be this wake, this phosphorescent wake, and
Okay.
it's and the Japanese planes could see that, and then know there was a PT boat there. So he got hit a couple of times. He had men who were injured, you know, um, and it came very close to being destroyed. And so he made a decision. Some of the other PT boat skippers did it too, of just when they were idling,
Uh-huh.
which it was at the time the PT 109 was destroyed, to just have one engine going.
Okay.
Um, so that was a decision that turned out to be have mixed results. But I think if he'd gone back again, he realized he would have you had to have all three engines going. There were no Japanese float planes that night. They were trying to intercept a Japanese convoy. So
Okay. Okay. So the memo you mentioned, is that part of the recent release of the JFK files that the administration has done, or is that
no,
separate?
that has to do with the assassination. So
Okay.
this is something completely different. But it was
Okay.
found uncovered deep in the bowels of the JFK library. No one had seen it
Okay.
before. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So people are still looking into the family separately from the assassination then, just out of interest? Or
Yeah, it
I
seems
mean, I
to me.
guess because people are writing books about it, so
It seems like every couple of months there's something, a new angle or a new book on the cat. I mean, every couple of months. I mean, a couple of months
Yeah.
ago, the last 2 months, there's 3 months. What is his name? Randy Terrera Borelli. Wrote a book on JFK. There's one that came out on JFK Jr. People are never satisfied. There's a new Netflix
Yeah.
coming out very shortly, a series on the Kennedy. So people never seem to get tired of the Kennedys and what they're doing and what they're up to, and
Yeah.
JFK. It's amazing how the longevity. I mean, for me, People Magazine picked up, and did a story about my book. So people
Yeah.
never seem to get tired of the Kennedys, so far
Right.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I wasn't alive for JFK, but I do remember JFK Jr. disappearing over the Bermuda Triangle, and I was young and I'm like, then I became fascinated with the Bermuda Triangle, and
Hmm.
and they haven't really found anything else out about that, have they?
I mean, it seems pretty clear cut that there's something happens. You kind of lose your. I'm not a aeronautical expert, but you sort of lose your bearings, and you don't realize where you're going, and he just lost his way. And I don't think that's one there's never been any, at least I haven't heard any, maybe you have, that there's been any sort of conspiracy involving that. Have you heard of any?
No,
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 but that
just
one,
oh,
you know
yeah,
we take it as what
maybe.
happened, that he lost his way, and pilot, inexperience, and very sad.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's maybe I've heard you hear some wild stuff out there, but never anything to stick on what
Right,
happened to him.
right.
So yeah, yeah, it is interesting that I can't think of many other families that have drawn so much attention to themselves even after their deaths, which obviously there's still Kennedys alive, but it's like people are more focused on JFK and his immediate family.
Yeah, I think it's just a combination of you know, he was so beautiful looking, had a beautiful wife, beautiful kids. He had such, charisma, and he's
Yeah.
frozen in time. He's frozen in time, and that's why I wanted to kind of look at his young life. I mean, to see, I discovered that, that even, it's hard to imagine JFK being, in lockup, and that's where I start this book, is that he and Joe go out to Martha's Vineyard, and they're involved in races, and things sort of
Yeah.
happen. A party they have gets out of control, and to think of JFK in jail was kind of I would say enlightening, but you don't expect to see that. Like, you don't think of him being in therapy or leading an
Yeah.
insurrection against the school administration. So the young life of Jack seemed very interesting, and also being out on a ranch, being on a kind of a dude ranch in Arizona, found that pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Just a different part of him.
Okay. Okay, so I don't think I knew he was locked up, and I definitely did not know he was on a dude ranch in Arizona. So can you tell us about that?
Which one?
Both, whichever one
Okay.
you want to start with.
Yeah, well, the one that comes right after high school, or preparatory school, after Chody graduates, and then he goes to Cape Cod,
Uh-huh.
and this is 1935, and he and Joe sail to Martha's Vineyard, Edgartown, for the Edgartown races. His father tells him before they go, "Hey, have a party." Gives him some money, have a party.
Yeah.
And although he sends this guy named the skipper to spy on them, so he doesn't quite trust them, even though Joe is now 20, Jack is now 18, and they do the races. They're not very successful. At one point, the first race, Joe is the lead skipper, and then the next
Hmm.
day, Jack is. Jack actually has a better time when he's the skipper, and they have a party, and gets out of control. And Joe's the older brother, so it's really up to him
Yeah.
to stop things before it gets out of control. The neighbors start complaining, and but it goes on and on and on, and the police are called, and
Yeah.
they're the ones who bear responsibility. They had the party, so they haul them off to jail, and their father certainly heard of it, and he could have bailed them out, but he made a decision. He told the skipper, leave him in there for a night,
Yeah.
it'll do him good. And so that's what he did. And then, so then they sailed home. And I think that was a defining point for Jack. Realized, well, my older brother didn't kind of handle things. So
Mm,
I'm going to rely on myself a lot more from now on. So I think he did that, and kind of went his own way and didn't rely on his older brother so much anymore.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what was the second thing?
The Dude Ranch in Arizona. How did he end
Okay.
up there?
Yeah, his father said, Jack wanted to go out for football at Harvard, but he was a pretty
Okay.
scrawny guy, always had trouble putting on weight.
Yeah.
So his father said, well, why don't you go out to this ranch and, work your butt off, make these, adobe bricks, build this adobe brick house, ride horses, build fences, build yourself up. So he was out there for, I guess, about 4 or 5 weeks.
Hmm.
And actually, when he was done with that, he was, much stronger. Really helped his health and maybe the dry air. So I think it was a good experience for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that helping with his health. Um,
Yeah, he
I
wasn't while he was there. For those whatever 4 or 5 weeks, he didn't have any health problems. Then he went to Los Angeles right after that for his 19th birthday, and hung around with his father a little bit, and sort of got his first taste of Hollywood society.
Oh yeah.
So that he's always in, even now we know about Jack with Marilyn Monroe. So
Hmm.
he like his father, he was always interested in the starlets and the actresses. So he had a number of affairs with some famous actresses, Sonia Heine and then Marlene Dietrich. So
Yeah.
he took after his father in that regard.
Yeah. What's the biggest difference between him and his father that you would say?
It's a good question.
Sounds like he was, even if he was a little bit narcissistic, that he was still a little bit more caring, do you think? Or maybe a little bit more honest? I guess the way I've seen his father portrayed, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, is that it was kind of anything to get to the top, and that wasn't always the best decision, is kind of
Yeah.
how I had seen it.
Yeah, I would say Jack had a little more integrity. So he didn't do you know, terrible things to get ahead. He's a pretty honest guy. So I think that would be a little bit of a difference. His father would do things like put out leaflets that maybe had, kernels of untruths in there.
Okay.
We could say even in the election in 1960, he did things to make sure his son won. Big thing. Jack wrote the
Hmm.
book Why England Slept. Well, it was a national New York Times bestseller. Why was it a bestseller? Because Joe Kennedy bought thousands of them. So,
Right.
that's not something that Jack would do. So I think there's a difference there.
Yeah. Yeah. And um I guess, uh, was was there hate towards Catholics um when Joe was a politician, and that did that kind of fade by the time JFK entered into the political arena, or was that still a battle?
Well, he ran for Congress in, where there were a lot of Catholics in Massachusetts, but there was certainly a lot
Uh-huh.
of anti-Catholic sentiment, and we see that in, he was the first Catholic president, so we see that. I mean, actually, the Kennedys they moved from the Boston area, Brookline, because they felt all this sentiment against them, and even when they moved down a place called it's in the South Shore of Boston called Situate. They wouldn't allow Joe Kennedy to join the country club. So there was still a lot of Catholic sentiment then, and
Mhm.
it's something that JFK had to deal with. He did a major speech during the campaign of 1960, um, facing that issue head on. But
Yeah.
there has been a lot of Catholic sentiment. We don't hear about that much anymore, but
No.
there's at
No.
that time.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high protein snacks for on the go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Yeah. That was one of the things that was surprising to me to learn. I'm in a small town in Iowa, so I had no idea that there was, with the age difference too. I did not know that was a thing in the past, was that there was so much hate towards that. So,
Right. That's surprising. Yeah, to me too.
Yeah. How was he with his sisters? Was he protective?
Yeah, he was protective of his sister Rosemary.
Yeah.
She had learning difficulties and certain disabilities, so he was protective of her. They'd go to some sort of tea dance, he'd make sure and dance with her, so he was protective of her. The other ones, there was sort of an age difference, and so he wasn't that close to, except for one, Kathleen Kit Kennedy. So he was very close to her. That was his favorite sister. And, there's been a lot of books actually written about her. She was
Yeah.
this lively person. So he was very close to her. When he was at Choate, she was at a school also in Connecticut. She was very lonely. So he would go there and visit her. They traveled around England a little bit during the prime minister's campaign after the war. So he was very close to Kay. That was certainly his favorite sister.
Okay. Yeah. What is the age gap between all the siblings? Is it
Oh,
there's
that's
5, right? Huh?
nine.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
I'm
I'm
not
really
going to
miss
get all. I can give you a little bit. Joe is 2 years older.
Yeah.
Kathleen was about 2 years younger. Bobby was, is it 8 years younger. So they
Uh-huh.
weren't, close. Now we think of, the JFK was, Bobby was his attorney general. They were very close, but there was such an
Yeah.
age difference back when I was writing this book that they really weren't close. You only see him when JFK begins his campaign for Congress. Then Bobby sort of comes into the picture and helps out a little bit. And then, of course, he became his campaign manager for
Uh-huh.
um, when he ran for the Senate and then for president.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if I was combining some of them. Like, it's been a while since I read that other book. Um
Oh yeah, there's Eunice and Jean.
oh, yes.
Eunice, she was involved in making sure that Jack, um, helped with people with disabilities. So that
Mhm.
was very important to her. It had to do with kind of Rosemary because Eunice
Yeah.
really cared for Rosemary a lot. So
Yeah.
she made sure that Jack, when he was president, made some effort to help people with disabilities.
Yeah. And I think she might still be involved in that, but I'm not sure.
Well, she's dead, so
Oh, she passed? Oh my
they're all
gosh.
dead.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was only in the past year and a half or so that all the Kennedys, the sisters and
Okay.
brothers, passed away.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Jeez. Yeah, I'm not keeping up with them as much as others, I suppose. So, um, so your book, it takes a novelistic style, and I actually like those styles a little bit better. But how do you balance historical accuracy with that kind of storytelling?
Yeah, I was certainly, trying to make it as accurate as possible. So there are no, made up characters or um, made up scenes. I did a little something where I thought I knew what happened in certain scenes. There wasn't any dialogue. So from that point, and we have a disclaimer, I put in some dialogue for some of the characters just to enliven it a little bit.
Yeah.
Something they would say. I knew, maybe two people had an argument. Well, I created some dialogue for them.
Hmm.
So I gave myself a little leeway there. I think it makes it more interesting for the reader. History can be kind of dry at some point,
Yeah.
but I do all back it up with, different sources from the, you know, books that I read and, online and going out to the Kennedy Library. So it's backed up by sources. So it's historically accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm interested in history, but like you said, it can be kind of dry. So if you can turn it into tell it like a story instead of like an encyclopedia, I think
Right.
that a lot more people are willing to learn about things in that format. So,
Right. I think
yeah.
especially like you think of the P-2109, I could have just said the Amaguri, the Japanese ship, plowed into the P-109 and
Mhm.
Jack all knocked back. But I tried to get into his emotions, what he felt like, and what he saw as the Japanese destroyers coming at them.
Yeah.
The guilt that he felt. So trying to get into their feelings, make it more visceral.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me think I don't know if you're into weather at all, but it makes me think of the, METAR data that meteorologists read, where it's just all these this line of all these little abbreviations that tell you about the weather. Well, they're not gonna read that on the news reporting about the weather. They've gotta tell you about it, you know?
Yeah.
So, what do you think is the most important leadership lesson we can learn from JFK's early and formative years?
Let's see. Well, I think one thing is just his persistence. He suffered a lot of setbacks having to do with his health. Um, I don't know if you call persistence a leadership a quality, but I sort of think it is. People who get knocked down if they don't keep going forward are probably not going to be leaders. Whatever, whoever that might be, whether it's an
Yeah.
Eisenhower or perhaps a Nixon. So you have to keep moving forward. So you have to have really a lot of the confidence in yourself, self-reliance. So I think persistence. Um, he was a person that was very curious. I think he treated people equally. Even though he came from a very rich family, he, when he was captain of the PT 109, he treated his men as equals. He got down there in the trenches with them, trying to fix the PT 109 to get it shipworthy. So he
Mhm.
was one of the men. So if you kind of hold yourself above everybody else, I don't think that's a good leadership quality.
Yeah. So, am I correct in kind of characterizing him as somebody who he makes mistakes, but he's going to do what he can to fix them to make things right?
Yeah, I think that's true. We can see that he realized he made some mistakes. Before the PT 109 was destroyed, and I think that led to his heroism. Even when help was on the way, he still went out in the middle of the ocean with the sharks and barracuda and the swirling tides, and he went out anyway um, to take the chance that maybe help wouldn't get him would find them. So he went out
Yeah.
anyway. So he went above and beyond the call of duty.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that description of swimming, it just creeps me out.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, that
know.
would be scary to swim out there with all that.
I know
So,
you can't see anything. You don't know. He was afraid that actually the American, gunboats might shoot him down if he
mhm.
called for help. So it was, you know, but
Yeah.
he persevered.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we kind of touched it, but why is it important to include the flawed parts of his story?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a balance.
Yeah.
He's mythologized as this sort of, semi-perfect human being, although
Hmm.
we do know about his womanizing. But,
Right.
I think it's important to see that, he had feelings like the rest of us, that he was, like I said, he was pretty, um, he's kind of a cheapskate, that he was a little narcissistic. So, let's see the whole balance of JFK and not just, mythologize him as this perfect person who was cut down in the middle of life. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's important to see the whole balance of the person. And, actually, I made me kind of appreciate him more, just seeing the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it makes him more real. It's easier for people to connect with someone like that. It probably humanizes him more than other writings that just write about all the positive things about him.
Right, right, right.
So,
And there's some
what was
great pictures in the book too.
oh, really?
That's one thing that there's some very rare pictures of him. One is a picture of him when he's 17 years old, and he's at a zoo in Florida.
Uh-huh.
And his sister Rosemary's in the background. He's in his underwear, and he's holding a python.
Oh,
And it's an
really?
incredible picture. So we included that. Him juggling when he's taking traveling through Nazi Germany. Some just some candid photos that you don't normally see. I think
Yeah.
really adds to the book.
Yeah. And did you access those from the Kennedy Library?
Some of them are
Okay.
Getty owns them, so some are from the library. So a variety of sources we found them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been to the Kennedy Library, so I'm kind of curious as to I don't even know how big it is.
It's big. It's big. I don't know if it's the biggest presidential library, but
Mhm.
that's one thing that I won't say made it easy for me, but the documentation, and of course, he was a great letter writer, and the Kennedys were great letter writers. So
Yeah.
there's just this, endless array of letters that, and they still keep releasing them. They want to keep his name
Okay.
alive. But, every once in a while they'll release a new cache of letters that he wrote or some new materials.
Yeah.
And there's a great correspondence between him and Lem Billings, which is, it's important, I think, mention Lem Billings. He met Lem when he was at Choate,
Okay.
and that became his best friend for life. He had a room at the White House, and Lem was gay. He certainly didn't come out, but he made overtures to Jack. He was kind of in love with Jack, and he
Uh-huh.
made overtures to Jack about some sort of a sexual thing. Uh, you know, Credit to Jack. He might someone lesser might have said, I can't handle
Yeah.
hang around with one with this different orientation, but he stuck with him, and they were like I say best friends for life.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that either, that part about it.
Yeah.
Um, his now his mother, did she keep a diary, and, didn't she write wasn't she the one that wrote, like, a ton of letters, like, always keeping in touch with her kids, or no?
No, she really didn't. She really didn't write too many
Okay.
letters at all.
Oh, okay.
There were a few, but there really isn't too much. The father wrote a bunch. Jack wrote a lot. Um, Joe Jr. wrote some. Kick wrote some. The sisters did. Yeah, she was a very distant mother. And I think that had a big effect on him.
Mhm.
His relationships with them were sort of one-dimensional, usually, involving sex. So I think her distance had that effect on him. So
Yeah.
she wasn't very, she didn't touch him at all. She wasn't a really close mother.
Yeah. It's w which is interesting because she has so many kids, but, Am I remembering this correctly? She wanted to go to school and ended up not going, and then and kind of got married and settled down instead of kind of going out and um making something of herself first.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think she graduated from high school.
Mhm.
Certainly didn't go to college. I don't think. I can't, not 100% sure, but she met the father, the patriarch, and then kids started happening, and that's how it went in those days. It one after
Yeah.
the other, one after the other. So um, yeah, that certainly affected maybe her. Well, in those days, a woman, it's sort of one job was to be a mother, and so it changed a lot since then.
Yeah. And did she focus a lot of attention on Rosemary and maybe neglect some of the other children, or just kind of like that with all the kids?
I think pretty much that with all the kids. I don't know if she was
Yeah.
sort of overwhelmed, with 9 kids and all the tasks she had to do. She would
Yeah.
always have notes pinned to her about, what to buy at the store. But in terms
Really?
of really feeling with the kids and, touching them and paying attention, um, she didn't do much of that. She was a very distant mother.
Yeah. I could see how that would turn JFK into kind of a womanizer, just for the yeah,
Different with
having a
each
woman in
kid,
your life.
does it different. Bobby certainly wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Joe took after his father. So, kids are affected in different ways by that.
Yeah. Right. What was your favorite chapter to write? Do you
Hmm.
have one?
I think his travels through Europe, it's on the eve of World War II.
Mhm.
He's just traveling on his own, starting from England, and he makes his way to France, and then, he goes through Nazi Germany. He goes through Italy. He sees Mussolini speak. He goes to Nuremberg, and they're getting ready. He's there a few days before the Nuremberg rally, which Hitler has once a year. And the town is just taken over by raving Nazis. They were going to stay for the Nuremberg rallies, but they decided not to. Um, in one other event, he's with a couple of friends, with a couple of friends, and they're driving in Munich, and
Okay.
they stop at a statue of this guy who became a Nazi martyr. He killed a communist instead of trying him for that. Hitler had him made a martyr, and they did a statue for him. So they're driving past the statue, and they stop to take a look at it. And all of a sudden, there's this Nazi mob surrounding them. They can't figure what are they doing? What's the matter? What have we done? And they
Mhm.
start throwing rocks at them and going after the car. And they had to get out of there in a hurry. But the reason was the car they were driving had English license plates, and Germany and Britain were getting close to being war and to going to war, and the Nazis hated the Brits, and
Yeah.
so that's when they did that. So the war part, P219, is interesting. His affair with Inga Arvad is pretty interesting. She had interviewed Hitler, and she came to the U.S., and they had this affair, and the FBI started tailing them, and JFK was in the service at that point, so they got him away from her. But that was his, I think the major love of his life. May have been, she provided this maternal aspect that he didn't get from his mother. She was very smart and
Mhm.
beautiful. So that chapter was pretty interesting.
Yeah. It it's to me, it's interesting to see how much of a life he lived in such a short period of time. And I think that can be like a generational thing. And I'm not trying to bash any other generations, but it almost seems like with each generation we're doing less and less
Hmm.
in our young adulthood. Because anytime I hear about someone from an older, generation from me, it's like, wow, you did so much before you were even 30 years old, but maybe the military and the political involvement, I'm sure, really aided in that.
Yeah, I mean, he had the means to do it. I mean, he had money. So it's not like everybody could travel through Europe and go to South America.
Mhm.
And of course, it allowed him to be introduced to certain people that otherwise he wouldn't have been. But he had a sense of adventure, and there's that key thing of realizing that with his health, something could happen. So
Yeah.
he took every opportunity he could to go somewhere, to meet some new people, to come out to California for a while, to go to Arizona. So I think he took
Yeah.
advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah. And I suppose his dad probably wanted him in the spotlight as much as possible as well. Is that correct?
I think so, and he wanted him to experience as much as possible. I mean, his father, a good part of him, said, you don't need to worry about money. So I want you to make a contribution to your country, and to do that, part of that is just learning and to see as much of the world as possible. So he pushed them to go out and do that, and that was it was a good aspect of
Yeah.
his father.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about your book?
Just that we're coming up on the assassination anniversary, but think about, I think it'll make it, if you're a Kennedy follower, that anniversary comes around, it can be kind of sad, but think about young Kennedy, and all the optimism,
Mhm.
uh, things he did, the journeys he did, and that can be as inspiring as, when he was president.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, my I think my first experience learning more about Kennedy was we went to the book what was that called? The hill, the grassy knoll, in
Or
Dallas
what,
for school.
Dallas, was it Dallas? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you hear like but when you actually look into his life a little bit deeper, it's hard not to get sucked in, whether it's his adulthood or his childhood. For some reason, it's just so interesting.
Yeah, so varied. So many experiences. Like I say, so much packed into. I just do it. It's from 18 to 29, but
Okay.
certainly a lot happens in that period of time. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
fascinating.
All right. Well, I like that your book is behind you.
Yeah,
Where
there's the
can
cover right there.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that cover too. Where can everyone find it at?
Certainly, you can see the links on my website, scottbadler.net, or
Okay.
it's available through Amazon. The libraries are really stocking it now.
Good.
And, there's still bookstores around. So,
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble, I understand, has it, and other independent bookstores have it also.
Good. I love Barnes and Noble, so I will look for it when I'm there. And I will make sure to include the link to your website in the show notes so everyone can check your book out.
Okay, that sounds great. It's great talking with you, Samantha.
You too. I really appreciate it.